is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 1, Episode 4, The Wrath of Khan. In this episode, Veronica thwarts a couple of amateur con artists, and there's a little bit more of Lilly's background, and I love her. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha, and this week we are doing episode 4, The Wrath of Khan. Khan spelled C-O-N, as in a confidence scheme. This episode was one of those that, you start to see a little bit of dated. There's been some feelings of being dated when it's fashion related, but technology is really, in particular, one of those things that does not age well. This episode had a little bit more to do with Lilly, which I'm very interested in her. And now that I feel like I have a slightly better sense of her from this episode, I feel like I can maybe understand how this girl could have gotten inadvertently involved in something without realizing how dangerous it was. Because she is obviously somebody bolder and a little more reckless than the average person, maybe. So, all right, let's start from the beginning here. Everything starts with the, first of all, Wallace getting into this girl that he's working with, which we find out, he's in the same room as her when she knocks something over. And we find out later that the whole, bit of him being in that room in the first place was something that he planned and got into on purpose so that he could be around her, which is the cutest thing. And he goes to Veronica when this girl that he has a crush on tells him that she thinks that she did something really stupid. And I love Veronica's reaction to this girl telling her in the bathroom, everything would have been fine if he'd just given me the money like he said he would. And Veronica's just looking at her like, oh, sweetie. And I like this because it sets Veronica apart in some ways from the average teenager. She has really seen some shit, and probably because of her father's line of work, because of what she does, and because of her history now and seeing what people are capable of doing. But the whole, feeling of, I can't believe that you are that naive, is written all over her face, even though she's trying really hard to be sympathetic to this girl and understanding. And that spoke to me. Everything would have been fine if he just hadn't completely conned me out of my money like he had intended from the beginning. Oh, summer child. Meanwhile, what's going on with Veronica is that she is getting more and more involved with Troy. And I'm very interested, not in their relationship really, but I'm interested in what's going on in her head with him. Because obviously she's got so much baggage still from Duncan. And I felt like this episode's the first time that we really see her by herself, contemplating what's going on with Troy and seeming to be really excited about it. So it made me feel a little more confident that she's actually invested in this, because I had been sort of wondering if maybe she wasn't really that into him and it was just something to do. Somebody to keep company. I think she's been lonely, and I don't know that she'd admit that, but that's gonna happen. She's been ostracized by practically everybody. Wallace is the first friend that she's had, in a while, apparently. When they become friends, she's sitting alone at the lunch table. So I had just been sort of lukewarm on Troy myself, and I felt like Veronica was too. And this is the first time that we see them like, we see her going into her room and thinking about him and smiling to herself and looking really excited with that goofy grin that you get when you're really into somebody. But we also have him asking her to go to the homecoming dance, and this brings back a lot of memories for her. And he seems kind of baffled because when he asks her, she just sort of smiles at him and goes into the house, and he's just kind of like, oh my God, this girl, like, she's a lot of effort. I don't understand what she's thinking right now. And we see a series of flashbacks explaining what the night of the homecoming dance was like when Lilly was alive. And this was really interesting for me because Veronica in these flashbacks is me as like a freshman in high school, maybe even sophomore. And Lilly is me as a junior, senior in high school. Like, the dress that Veronica wears, there's a photo on my Facebook of me in a dress that is startlingly similar. That pink, high, square-necked, very simple A-line, like, with her hair all down and looking very, like, wholesome and pretty. I even had, like, I think a flower crown hairband kind of thing that was actual real flowers. And then when I was like a junior, it was junior year of high school, I wore a dress almost exactly like the one that Lilly wears, with the cowl neckline that dips really low and shows a ton of cleavage. It's backless and has like almost like chains. It had chains going up the back with like a crescent moon in the middle. And it was really like slinky and revealing and awesome. I looked amazing in that dress. And it was one of those like things when I looked back at, I couldn't believe that I had ever worn that pink, like nothing dress. It just was so obviously not me, but I didn't know that yet, did I? And I love that Lilly, at this point, Veronica's still wearing this stuff, but Lilly can see that's not really who she is. And when we see Veronica today, it's maybe a combination of circumstances changing her perspective and her wanting to like distance herself from who she used to be. So she's not really wearing the clothes that she used to, which were all very wholesome. You know, as she puts it, you're not a yellow cotton dress. But also I think maybe Veronica has just started to grow up and understand who she is, and that those, you know, outfits were what she wore because she didn't really know what to wear, and they're very basic and simple, and that seemed fine at the time. Not like, that's what I think people misunderstand, is sometimes you don't pick things because you're trying to make a statement. Sometimes you pick things because you don't know what statement to make and you're just not going to make one. So yeah, this little scene of the flashback with the two of them and her, Lilly, being frustrated with Veronica, I just really enjoyed because it felt very real. And there's always, like, in groups of friends, there's always going to be that one person who's a little bit more bold and ready to, like, be out there and vulnerable about what they're wearing and gets frustrated with people around them not being willing to take risks. And I grew to be that person eventually. I got named Best Dressed in high school, but it was a long time coming. You know, I was incredibly shy and like afraid to do anything outside of what was mainstream acceptable fashion at the time for a while. So yeah, and Lilly, like, as the night continues, I'm just going to talk about the flashback as a whole, before we get into everything else. Lilly tells Veronica, like, by the way, you know, we're not going to the dance, right? Like, that's not how this works. We are going to tell them we went to the dance and then have a party in the limo and just do whatever the hell we feel like doing and drink and then go home and act like that's where we were all night. And this is one of those things that, like, it looks like they had a good time. It looks like that is a very happy memory for Veronica. Like, all of that, the using the footage, like, this is obviously something that they all feel, probably, you know, mixed feelings at this point because of Lilly being gone, was a like memorable moment, a milestone maybe in all of their relationships. For me, I like dances, and I would be super bummed to hear this. I want to go to the dance. Let's just do an hour of the dance. I'm fine with that. Just an hour. And then we can go and be in the limo and everything. But just like ditching it all together, I'm like, what a bummer, you know? Plus you like spent money on a dress. And if you are doing it up, like I bet they are, then you probably paid somebody to do your hair and everything else. And then nobody gets to see you? No. No. But yeah, they go out in this limo. They have all the champagne. This is the kind of thing that I totally believe would happen. But as a very sheltered kid, it's so baffling to me that teenagers are able to get their hands on tons of bottles of champagne and their parents don't know about it somehow. I again believe that can happen, but it's so outside of the realm of what I experienced in school. And I'm much more in personality like Veronica in these flashbacks. Like, it's a real contrast to see how she's not willing to ditch the dance because she's afraid of what her father's going to say and afraid of the repercussions of it. But then we flash forward to today, and what she's doing is very risky. Everything that she does, like for her job, she's pretending to be other people. She's wildly improvising different scenarios and like being really shady and sneaky and lying. And that's so clearly not who she was at that point. And I've been covering Fire and Hemlock for the Spoil Me series that's been commissioned recently. I just read the 3rd section, and there's a moment where one of the characters says, I'm realizing now that being a hero, the parts that are difficult and that you need a lot of courage for aren't the parts where you have to like get violent with somebody and you have to step forward and confront an evil of some kind. That's not the part that's hard. The part that's difficult is being willing to look ridiculous, being willing to make yourself kind of like a joke if you have to for a little while. And this whole thing with Veronica and this con, she's very willing to do that, and I just don't know that I could. And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, Lilly's argument about breaking the rules here is just, yeah, you'll get in trouble. So once you get in trouble, it will be done. And you're going to have amazing memories that you're going to treasure forever. And what? You're going to be grounded for a week after? Ooh, big whoop. And really, Lilly's not wrong. Like, she has a much, in some ways, healthier perspective of the shortness of life. And, even the moment where they're getting their photos taken and her mom's like giving her this look because of her cleavage. And she's like, what? I'm not going to be young forever. I only have so many braless years left. Like, this is the way I wish I had thought back then a little bit more. But I was, despite being willing to wear these kinds of things, I was still a little bit more hung up on what people thought of me than Lilly seems to be. So, and it's just really ironic that Lilly is like this and treasuring every moment because who knows what could happen. And then, sure enough, she doesn't get any more moments. Well, so basically the rest of the flashback is them doing Never Have I Ever, and Truth or Dare. And there comes a moment where Lilly does Never Have I Ever Not Had Sex. Which is basically trying to, be like, if you're a virgin, you have to drink. And Veronica drinks. And I noticed that there's a bit of hesitation before, what's his name? Drinks? I can't remember his name. All of a sudden, I'm just going blank. I'm wanting to say Conrad, and I know that's not correct. Duncan. Thank you, Agnes. You got me. We got it at the same time. I kind of wonder if he wasn't a virgin. Like, there was something about the way that he hesitated and then is like, well, what the hell? And takes a drink. I was like, are you saying what the hell because you decided that you're just going to lie? And Veronica looks at him very expectantly. Like, it hasn't even entered her head that he's had sex. So, yeah, I'm feeling some secrecy is happening there. Nancy's saying, or did he not want Logan to know? I mean, maybe, but I just would be surprised if he is a virgin that Logan doesn't already know. Logan literally saw him jerking off. Like, they're apparently really, like, making free around each other with the, I just can't imagine jerking off in the shower at school. Who would do that? Like, I'm sure it happens, but it's just so risky. And I think it's also, like, my school, we did not use the showers. Like, there were showers in the locker rooms in the gym, but nobody ever used them. We all would just, wear our dirty clothes home and shower at home, because what are we, like, And I feel like there's a lot in TV and movies about kids showering at school that I'm not sure is representative of the majority of our experiences. But nevertheless, so yeah, this, when it comes to Veronica's turn, she says, "Never have I ever gone skinny dipping." And Lilly says, "This is not acceptable. We have to do something about this soon." And that winds up coming into play at the very end of the episode. So that's all of the flashbacks. And we're going to talk about Troy and Veronica's dad real quick. So I love this because Veronica knows her father and Troy does not. And he is really relaxed about meeting her dad. He says, "I give good parent," which, I feel like it depends on the kind of person you are, and it depends on the kind of parent you are. Some parents are just easy to fool. Like, it's really kind of a crapshoot when you meet someone's parents, because it can go like one of three ways, I feel like. A, they're easy to fool, and if you are just like a decent person and respectful, they love you, and it's like nothing. B, they don't like you immediately because they had decided that they weren't going to like you because what they had heard about you, they didn't like. And that's it. Once you meet them, like, it's just really uncomfortable and strange, and they never grow to like you. That was my experience with my high school boyfriend. And I realize looking back now that his parents were racist. And despite me looking very white, I am not white. And I think they had a problem with that. And I just didn't pick up on it. But I think back and heard, like, they used slurs right and left. I don't think they ever used the N-word, but they very well may have. But they would use other ones. And I was just like, wow, what classy people. I hated his family. And now I'm like, oh my God, they probably hated me. And they had this weird paranoia that I was like trying to marry into the family to take over the paint business that they owned. And they were really genuinely concerned about it. It was the weirdest, most like self-involved conspiracy theory I've ever heard of. So I feel like that's the thing. And I think that happens more, like the more protective the parents tend to be. So if you are a dad who's being very protective of his daughter, you are going to dislike guys that she's dating just on influence or on instinct. And if you are a mother who's very protective either of her daughter or like a mama's boy who has a kind of a natural attachment. I don't know if you guys have ever dated somebody like that, but it's the most awkward thing ever. I have some stories, and there is a whole Reddit about mother-in-laws that is worth a look. Just trust me on this. If you want some like reading that will have your mouth hanging open and that will suck you in for a good 2.5 hours, check out the mother-in-law Reddit. But yeah, and then there's the third way, which is they see right through your bullshit. And they're rare. Those parents are rare. Because mostly I think parents kind of don't want to see through your bullshit. Like, they don't want to know, right? It's so much easier to think that like, oh, well, they seem like a good kid. I'm sure they'll be fine. And the alternative is to be like, no, they're a little con artist. I was also a little con artist. I know how this works. And Veronica's dad is of that type. And I enjoy the like drop of this surprise because the audience doesn't know this, but he's quizzing Troy about what, like, whether or not he's planning on going to the dance and really going to the dance and what they plan to do afterwards. And, Troy says what he thinks the dad wants to hear, which is, well, Veronica told me she needed to come home right after. And when he says, are you going to the dance? You're not leaving early and going to do something else. He's like, well, no, I mean, the point of the dance is to go to the dance. And then he drops the, oh, okay, so you don't mind that I called and canceled your reservation at the Four Seasons then? Oh, snap. I cackled. I straight up cackled. And I love the like completely nonplussed expression on Troy's face. Like, he wasn't ready. She tried to warn you, yo. She did say my dad can be kind of intense, but nope, wasn't listening. Didn't believe her. Didn't understand what that meant. I think he just thought, oh, what she means by intense is like the traditional daddy coming out with a shotgun warning you not to take advantage of my daughter. But he was wildly underestimating her dad. So that was pretty great, and we don't really see the fallout from that, which was a shame to me. Like, the camera cuts away. But once we get to them all going to the dance at the very end of the episode, her wanting to, like, take a pit stop sends him into a bit of a panic. So he's learned his lesson. He knows now that he should be afraid of her father. And that she, like, gets her way, and she still goes and does what she wants to do. But he isn't as, like, freewheeling and fancy free as he might have been without meeting him first. Which, I just can't, like, this is another thing with me just not being part of this whole culture. The idea that, like, a teenager can make reservations at the Four Seasons. I'm sure that's true. I just can't imagine. I always thought, like, there was an age limit and that they would take your ID and check to make sure that you were of age to do this. I guess he could be 18. I assumed for some reason, and there's nothing to support this, that if you were going to rent a hotel room that you needed to be like 25, like to rent a car. But I guess not. I've worked in hotels and I don't remember a rule like that. So I had this like in my head. And, having the money to pay for the hotel, like, I guess he just has a credit card that he can use. Like, his family has money. He's one of those kids. So this is all just so alien to me. But so, yeah, let's get to the con now at this point. I have some questions about this. So guys in the chat here, please help me out a little bit along the way. The girl that comes to Wallace to ask him for his help, she is interested. She is looking for help because she got an email she thinks by mistake meant for somebody else, because that's how it's meant to be, how it's meant to look. And it's that Nigerian scam that, oh, I'm waiting to come into my money, but I am in dire straits right now. Can you lend me some? And I will pay you back with 200% interest in 2 weeks, which is, just, of course it's a fucking, what are you talking? But so this girl falls for it, thinks that, oh, how lucky that I just happened to be on the receiving end of this mistake email, and gets in touch and gives them the money in cash, and then never hears from them again. And $2,000, I mean, that's not nothing. I would be losing at my wit's end, So what Veronica does is backtraces the email address, and she also calls the number from the email because she's assuming, rightfully, that they've sent this email to like hundreds of people and just waiting to see who gets back to them. So she pretends to be a mark and uses the name Amber and shows up and gets a bead on the guy, and then like tells him, oh, so who do I make the check out to? And he's like, bitch, it's cash. What the fuck? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll meet you here tomorrow at the same time. And this is the part that I got confused about. I've watched this episode twice and I somehow keep missing it. After meeting this guy, she, I think, does she follow him to a theater? This dude, is he the same one? Yeah. Okay. So she follows him to the theater that he works at, I guess. And he's wearing an outfit that the girl Wallace is helping. She says the guy that I saw was wearing the same clothes, but it's not the same guy. And we wind up finding out that this dude doesn't realize that he's part of a scam. he's also being scammed. He gets hired via some like Backpage ad to do something that he thinks is part of like one of those Sting reality shows, like What Would You Do? Except that it's called Duped, and it's to see what people will fall for, which apparently many people will fall for many things, because when she's like, there were no cameras, he's like, the whole point of it is that you don't see them. And I'm like, dude, if you were on the show, you'd have met the director. You would know where the cameras are. They would tell you exactly where to stand. How do you not know this, you moron? But okay, he gets duped. He has a phone number that she can use that he was given, but it turns out to go to a phone booth, which like those still exist at this point. So that winds up being kind of a dead end. I think she was hoping that by seeing this guy in person, it would lead her exactly back to who was behind this, but they're too smart for that. They have a little bit of a layer between them. So then what she winds up doing is, I think she traces the domain from the email and figures out where it was coming from. If I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to go back here and find the moment that she's talking about it with Wallace, because they're like walking down the street. A payphone that doesn't accept incoming calls from a place called Gameland. Oh, okay. So they used the phone number from the place that they go and hang out. It's a phone number for a public phone that's in their gamer cafe, which is pretty dumb. They could have just used any random payphone, but they decided to use that one. All right, guys. So you were almost smart. You almost had it. So this is when we go to the part that I was mentioning earlier, where Veronica is willing to make herself look more ridiculous than I would be willing to do in her place. This is because I have a fragile ego, I think. She shows up in this, first of all, amazing ensemble of white knee socks, Mary Jane's, pleated skirt, like matching tartan necktie, and like these weird fingerless gloves. And she walks in and every dude in the place is like, yo, what's up? Because she's the only chick in there, and she's wearing this like dumbass bob wig. And I love how much she obviously does not belong here. Like, she's just so, she's too put together, like, for this crowd. And this part was what, I get really bad secondhand embarrassment. So there can be moments that I know it's all for a good cause. I know that this is what you have to do and there's a method to this, but it's so hard for me to watch, and I couldn't do it. She has to pretend to not know what she's doing at all, and does this like gamer thing in teams and keeps killing the guy from her own team in order to get him to like get angry and out himself. So she keeps shooting like different people to see who reacts. And then the guy that starts to get the most angry is the one with the username that's very similar to the email address that the fraud email came from. So she winds up tracking this guy back to a school, and with him, like, it's this this culture at this school where he is well known and everybody is aware of him and his friend, like, they're called the Silicone Mafia, which is such a dumb name. And they're working on something. This escaped me. She explains it a couple times, and I just like found myself completely zoning out both times. But the crux of it, it doesn't matter what their business is going to be. What matters is they don't want investors, because then they're going to have to share their success. So what they're doing is scamming people for startup money, so that once they have this all in place and they go through with this, whatever product they're designing, it's all theirs. And they have all of these hard drives and all of these backup hard drives. and their room is under lock and key, is not even close to the kind of security that they have. Like, one girl is like, they have security with lasers, and like, it sounds like she's exaggerating, like she doesn't know what she's talking about in the moment, but she's not wrong. It turns out that their security system is hooked into his cell phone. So when Veronica goes and like tries to break into their room, he gets notified and they come shooting up the stairs and want to know what the hell is going on. And she plays it like it was the guy that they hired for the job, because she has his headshot with her, and she pins it to the board outside their room as like a, you know, red herring for them to think that this dude had something to do with it rather than her. But Wallace like comes up the stairs at the same time as these guys, and she goes up to Wallace and says, "I'm not feeling too good, Papa Bear." And that was hysterical to me. And Wallace later is like, "Papa Bear?" And she says, "Never happened." So yeah, this whole like deal with these two guys, what she winds up doing is using her dad, first of all, to put the scare into them, because she's not entirely sure what their business is yet, and thinks maybe they're growing weed because people are talking about how hot the walls are to their rooms and their closets, and they think that there are grow lamps. So she has her dad go in there pretending to be with the, like, what do you call it? ASAC, and with fucking backup, bless his heart, and searches the room, searches in quotes, and bounces before they really have a chance to be like, "And who are you again? And do you have a warrant?" And tells Veronica that he hasn't found anything. So she figures that it has to be something computer related. So then she gets her dad to pose as an admissions counselor from their school, calls these two guys up and says that he needs them to take the decoy student, who is Wallace, to an event. It's the private screening of the Matrix Online game, which these guys are such nerds and are super excited about that. And they take him, and it's the perfect time for Veronica to go in and break into their place. And she is unprepared for, again, the level of security, because once she finally like finds where some of these wires in their room are heading, it goes to a safe. And she has to figure out how to get into the damn thing. And they get back to their room after realizing that they have been had and there is no Matrix screening. And their servers or their hard drives are all gone. I couldn't tell. Like, there was a moment where they open up what I think is supposed to be like the cooling apparatus for those hard drives, and all of this liquid is pouring out. Is that supposed to be coolant, or is that like the drink that's in the cans that she put in that same spot where the hard drives had been? Because I watched that a few times. I actually rewound it and watched it again, and I couldn't figure out what I was seeing. Nancy says their main drives are gone and their backups are ruined with energy drinks. Oh, she couldn't get in the last safe, so she poured soda. So the safe doesn't protect against liquid? That's a bad safe. Yikes, that's like not worth the money at all. A safe like that. Oh, it had air vents in order to... I see, because it's full of electronics. So, okay, I got you. So you can't access them, but they still need to be cooled. So, yeah. Okay, I see what y'all are saying. I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, what? Because it looks like antifreeze, you know? The energy drinks are like that bright green. So I thought that do they have like antifreeze circulating around their hard drives to keep them cool? That is like serious. But nope. Okay, thank you guys for explaining that to me, because I kept watching it and not getting it. And she's taped a note to their computer that starts the same way that their scam email starts, which is, "Hey, buddy, I was wondering if you can help me." And it's great. I just love the look on their face as they realize. And she meets them in the park with the only hard drives that are functional in her custody, hidden in a garbage can. And I was sort of wondering if they were really all there. Like, they hand over the money and turn to dig through the garbage can. And Veronica and Wallace's lady, I can't remember her name, they all start walking away. And if I were the two of these dudes, I would not let them leave until I was sure that they were there. One of them eventually, as she's getting into her car, you hear him say, I've got one. But I wouldn't be surprised if she just put one in there and then they realize the rest are gone. And the girl who had been scammed, she says something about how she feels a little bad because she knows she's not the only one who got scammed. But they got her money back by doing this, and everybody else who got scammed is just screwed. So that's when Veronica says that the FBI has a fraud division, and she definitely reported these guys and gave them a bunch of information on them. So hopefully the people who got scammed may eventually get their money back. I appreciate that she reported them. I would not hold my breath on getting money back after a scam. Like, that's the sort of thing that just doesn't tend to happen. Even if they nail these dudes, they probably wouldn't have money to spare. Georgia, is that her name, Nancy? The one that Wallace likes is Georgia. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking back. I don't even remember him saying her name. I'm sure he must have. But yeah, Wallace is like so into her, and it's really cute. Veronica at one point says, man, you've got it bad. And he says, there ain't nothing bad about this. And I was like, aw. And yeah, so that's the end of the scam thing. And that was pretty fun. It was a little goofy, but I was fine with that. You know, there's something very satisfying about seeing a couple of bratty, like, not bratty isn't even the word, a couple of what look like douchebag gatekeepers who are high on their own, like, very localized notoriety getting served a little bit. I'm going to bounce back to the homecoming thing again, because it was a little bit weird. Like, they say in the announcement at the beginning of the episode that there's like going to be a dedication ceremony for the memorial fountain for Lilly. That's how homecoming's going to open. But when we go to that ceremony, everybody's in their school clothes, even though it's dark already. And then we flash to the scene at the end when Veronica's in the limo with Troy and Georgia and Wallace. So I guess there was like a ceremony and then everybody went home and then got changed. I would have thought that we'd all attend the ceremony in our nice clothing, but I guess not. This dedication ceremony, Logan was the one who worked on the video for it. Originally, Duncan was going to do it, but Logan kind of insisted. He really wanted to, and I think Duncan was glad to have it off his hands. And he says to Logan, my dad wanted me to do it because he wanted it to be someone who knew her, which I feel like you could take that in any way. Like, I'm not just going to give it to somebody who works in AV at the school, but I think really what he meant was he didn't want mom to do it, which we see how antagonistic the relationship is between Lilly and her mother a few times, and it's not great. And Logan winds up putting together, he's like sitting there in the computer room, pulling together pieces from all of these different videos of her as a kid, horseback riding and at recitals and whatever. And he's obviously a little frustrated because this is all very sweet and full of light and wholesome goodness, but this is not who Lilly was. And there's a moment of real, like, he gets really irritated with Veronica coming in and says something like, what about me ignoring you made me think you're welcome here? But she comes back later and she has this tape of the night of homecoming and gives it to him. And he seems grateful that she did this, even though he doesn't know what's on it yet. But he's still very standoffish and says something like, well, I have a lot of work to do, and kind of shoos her away. When we go to the dedication ceremony, the video starts off with all of the footage of her doing young, innocent, sweet little girl things. And then there's like a guitar riff, and it's suddenly Lilly like this last year. Almost a grown woman and acting up, mooning people out of the car window, drinking champagne straight out of the bottle, getting wild. And it's really telling to see the looks on everyone's faces. Logan gets misty-eyed clearly and looks over at Veronica thanks, I really this is what we needed. Duncan doesn't look at Veronica because I don't think he's aware of where the footage came from, but he's clearly happy to see this part of this is the sister he knew, his father gets super emotional. Obviously there's something going on there, and it's easy to be well, he killed her and it's guilt. Maybe, but I tend to think that he just happened to be closer to his daughter than his wife was, or closer than he was to his son. And he knows, seeing this, that this is exactly who she was. And then there's her mom, who doesn't just flip out, which I was worried that she was going to cause a scene or pull the plug on the projector or something, but she doesn't do that. She just looks a little horrified and embarrassed, because the first thing that she says at the end of the homecoming scene, when they get back to the house and Veronica's dad is already there, she asks Lilly if she's drunk. Lilly says, well, not really anymore. And her response is not you could have gotten hurt, I was worried about you. It's none of that. It's, why do you insist on humiliating me? Which is very telling. And this is what I feel she was thinking at this moment, is just how does this reflect on me as a mother? And, it's not only is it not about you, but the fact that you were trying to present her as somebody that she is clearly not, and most people would have to know that she was clearly not at this dedication, just shows how little regard you have for the truth or anyone else's understanding of the truth. You really think that the facts can just be what you say they are, regardless of what everyone else knows, which is a pretty arrogant place to be. So it's a very satisfying moment. And when it ends, there's actually an interesting little bit with Weevil and his guys, where dude claps him on the shoulder and is all right, we gonna head out? And Weevil turns around and he's been crying, and he wipes his eyes and he's yeah man, night is young, let's go. And he has to kind of get it together. And I was oh shit, does she have something going on with Weevil, or is he just an emotional guy? It could be either or. It could be that he's just a little bit sensitive, and he really could tell that this was a sincere thing as he was watching it, and it just got to him. It could be that he and her had a bit of a connection, or that she was straight up cheating on Logan, but I have a feeling the show's not going to have Logan get cheated on with somebody from the gang twice. Or it could just be that maybe she reminded him of somebody, or who knows. But I really liked that little moment. They keep doing these things with Weevil that are just so interesting and surprising. And it didn't feel like it was played for a laugh. Oh, look at this tough guy fucking crying like a pussy. No, it felt like he really had a moment there. And he gathered it together, and he's still in charge. But it's just meant for the audience to see and be oh, there's something there with him. And can we talk about the fountain? Because they unveil it, and it's the most pathetic fountain. Is it just me? That shit was weak. Hardcore weak. I was super, when they say memorial fountain, I'm thinking something that's comes shooting up out of, and it's just sort of lively and representative of life, as, something that's supposed to evoke what Lilly was like, which is larger than life, over the top, a little wild. And instead it's this trickle that frankly looks like a leak, not really a fountain, just very sedately dribbling over a wet piece of slate that I guess has a plaque on it or something with her name. It is a bummer, man. I think Lilly would be irritated with that fountain. But there it is. So the end of the episode, when Veronica is heading out to homecoming with Troy and Wallace and Georgia, she asks to pull over and gets out of the car, and in the most unbelievable scene of the show so far, just leaves 3 people sitting in the... she doesn't invite them with her. She specifically tells Troy, no, you have to stay here, and leaves them sitting in the limo and walks out and drops her probably like $200 homecoming dress on the sand and walks naked into the water and ruins her hair and her makeup and everything, which I really understand and appreciate the symbolism of this moment of her doing this in honor of her friend, and it being on homecoming night when that was when the video was from, and her trying to sort of wash off the baggage that she has because she almost didn't agree to come with Logan to the dance in the first place because it seemed like whatever she would have with him was just going to be this like hollow echo of what she really wanted, which was the night that she had with those other 3 over again. Like, she wanted to get that back. So this is a symbolic, like, cleansing and letting go in a way. But seriously, like, she had her makeup done and she had her hair done and she was wearing a $200 dress. No, sister. Go get dressed. He's going to show up at the dance with you looking like what? With your mascara running all down your face and your 80s wet look hair now? All right. I guess. I had feelings about it. I just really wanted to, honestly, I wanted the camera to swing back inside the limo, and I wanted to see their faces in reaction to her doing this, because I just can't imagine. They must all have just been like, is she really swimming all alone right now? Is that okay? I guess that's what we're doing. So yeah, that's the end of the episode. So again, I appreciate the symbolism. I know what they were doing there. I understand what she was doing there, but it irritated me because that's just me. Got it. Forgive me, guys, but that's, you know me by now. But yeah, I really did like this episode, and I really liked seeing more of Lilly. Like, every time we have a bit of a flashback, sometimes when shows do this kind of storytelling where there's the present that's clearly very affected by the past, and then you jump into the past, what's going on in the present can be so compelling that the flashbacks feel irritating and not interesting. They take you out of the story, they frustrate you, and the show that comes to mind in that regard is like Arrow. I don't know if any of you ever have watched that show. I finally stopped after I think like season 3 or 4. But it's heavy on the flashback stuff, and it's just super boring. Like, every time it would be a flashback, I was like, and not just because the story wasn't that interesting, but at least what's going on in the flashbacks in Veronica Mars, it's all characters that we know in the present. It's all characters that we are aware have also been affected by these flashback moments. In Arrow, it's all these people that we've never met before or that we don't meet for a while. And it doesn't feel connected in any way to what we're watching happen today. So I really like the way that they've chosen to do this with Veronica Mars, where we're seeing how different she is and how different everyone else is. Like, again, we get more of a sense of why she liked Duncan, whereas now he's so boring and sedate, and that's why he's on drugs right now, to calm him down and get him through the day. And I liked this moment of her and like Logan being on the same side again briefly, because it shows that he's maybe not entirely antagonistic toward her personally. It's just, he blames her for her dad like everybody else. But when reminded of the way it used to be with all of them, he can remember that, oh yeah, this was Lily's friend. Like, they meant something to each other, and I keep acting like that just went away, and that's not how friendship works, So, Agnes is talking about Arrow. Couldn't stand the flashbacks the 5th season. Yeah, I did not stick around that long. I just started to get really irritated. There are some storylines that I could mention that I will not, that I was like, what are you doing? But yeah, so I'm curious about what they keep doing with Lily's mother, because Lily, when they get home in the morning, Lily's the one that gets screamed at, and she says to her mother, "Hi, I have a brother who was also there, by the way." And her mother says, anything that ever went wrong with this family, you were at the root of it, which is a fucking thing to say to a, like, I can't, what? And this is the sort of thing where I'm like, is she referring to something that wound up getting Lily killed? Is that what she's referring to? Is it Lily's mom that killed her? Or are they just trying to red herring me and make me think that maybe it was Lily's mom that killed her? You know, like, I can't trust the show to give me like a straight deal with that. But her mom certainly seems like somebody that is not only not really connected to reality, but doesn't seem to appreciate what probably she herself was like as a teenager. Because her mom strikes me as somebody who's very willful and ambitious, and I would be really surprised if she hadn't been a lot like Lily when she was younger. And it just seems that seeing that reflected back at her maybe is what's bothering her so much. But she can't deal with her daughter. Like, it's just, she lets her son get away with murder. And Duncan, to his eternal credit, tries to step forward and take the blame and be like, this was all my idea. And like, it's not fooling anybody. We all know. But it really is a nice moment to see that he's sticking up for his sister, which actually brings up the point that I had been thinking about earlier. Are they meant to be twins, like fraternal twins? Because I get the impression they're all in the same grade. And unless mom popped them out like right next to each other, that couldn't possibly be the case. So they must be twins, right? Lily is 1 year older, okay, but she's still in the same grade as the rest of them, nevertheless. Which I guess is probably believable. But it's just like, so mom popped out Lily and got pregnant like 4 months later. She's 1 grade older. Oh, okay. That's interesting. But Logan isn't. Logan and Duncan are in the same grade as Veronica. So Lily was the only one that was not in their class. Okay, that's interesting. So really, whatever she knew, whatever like secret, if she's not in the same class as them, it could be somebody that was like at the school at the time that they just aren't that familiar with, or, you know, who knows? But that changes things a little bit in my mind. All right. Well, I like that. All right. Well, I'm about to wrap this up. So do you guys have anything that you want to ask me before I sign off? And I want to thank Jacqui for commissioning this episode. I really appreciate it. I'm excited that I think there's 2 more after this that have been booked up. Charissa and Leon have episodes 5 and 6, and then after that I don't have any booked. So those are open if anybody wants to commission those. unspoiledpodcast.com/shop. Weekly check-in, who killed Lily? I like this weekly check-in. Who killed Lily? Like, at this episode, I feel like it's her mom. It has to be somebody close to her because it happened in her house, you know? Like, I don't see how that happens in her house without it being somebody that everyone knows, that it wouldn't be at all unusual to see them, like, going and coming from the house. Is it Weevil? Is that why he was crying while he was watching? Because he was the one who killed her? I don't buy it. Yeah, let's go. So this week I'll say her mom. Her mom did it. Because she just seems like she's not entirely stable somehow. Is it? You guys are tormenting me. I'm curious, and don't answer this, but I am curious if at the end of this season we even know yet. Because I would kind of like it if it's like the, first season of, what do you call it? Twin Peaks, where it ends and you just still don't have straight answers, which I didn't like the way that continued to be a thing, but I really was pleasantly surprised that that's how that season ended. Or like a little bit like Pretty Little Liars, where things keep on like ramping up and you still don't know, but other things keep coming up and getting solved in the meantime. So it sort of sates you in a way without it feeling like everything's so wildly drawn out. I was thinking of doing episode 7, but wanted to wait to see how the earlier time worked for me. Oh, got you, Nancy. You can do any you can do the later time too. Some people were, they're still doing 4 o'clock. 3 o'clock is just what this person picked for this one. Which character do you want to know more about? Let's see. I think at this point, I kind of want to know more about Logan. He's a little bit of a cipher, you know? I do believe that he really cared about Lilly. I don't really know how he feels about Duncan. Like I said, I think last or the episode before last, the two of them are bonded now in a weird kind of grisly way that you can't just walk away from. But I'm not entirely sure their friendship is because they really like each other either. It might just be that they feel like there's not other people to talk to about what they have suffered and gone through in their grief, you know? So I'd like to know what's Logan's deal at this point. Anything else before I bid you all adieu? This Friday, I'm going to have the next installment of So You Want to Be a Wizard. And on Saturday, I'm going to be doing the next installment that I was actually just talking about of Fire and Hemlock, which is really good. So I got super emotional during the last recording of Fire and Hemlock, which was yesterday. It was like, caught me completely off guard, but dude, it was hard. But it was really good. It's a good book. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for coming and chatting and giving me a little bit of guidance and reminders about people's names and how things worked out. And I hope that you've been enjoying listening and everything. And yeah, hopefully I will see you all here again next week. I believe next week is at 3 o'clock also. Yes, it is. And then the week after, it's back at 4 o'clock. So, yeah, I'll see you all again soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.